I came into the room a little late this morning, but I heard you say that the lower interest rate cost you more money.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if that was in a specific scenario, but I refied my home, I think twice now.
Mhm.
I went from a 3.5, that was the original loan, up to a 3.75. I pulled out about 180K, and then the interest rate dropped. And I went down to a 3.25 and then down to a 2.75. The last refi was, it was a short duration. So the institution just said, we'll just have you sign two documents. We'll just lower your rate because they didn't want to lose my business. I didn't have to go through a full refi. It was just a loan modification or rate modification or adjustment is what they call it.
No, recast.
Now I'm down at 2.75. My payment now is slightly higher than the first payment, slightly. But like I said before, I pulled out 180K. I didn't use that 180K to pay down debt. At the time, I was thinking I was going to pull out money, invest into another property. I never did. I rolled that money into the market, and I've made more than 5% annually on that money since then. So I'm thinking my scenario is slightly different than the scenarios that you were referring to, but I'm kind of thinking like, how am I paying more when it feels like I'm paying way less and I've made more money on my money?
I'd be glad to talk to you about that. So here's what you did that a lot of people don't do, G. Taking money out to reinvest is a wise thing. Listen, sitting on that equity, does that make sense to you?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
So it doesn't do anything.
So you pulled it out. Okay. So here's what I'm talking about. Refining just to get a lower interest rate, mistake. Okay. But if you refi to pull out money to reinvest, and then let's say you didn't know what we're talking about here and they gave you a lower interest rate, well, that's another story. But what I'm saying is that what if you knew what I was talking about and you refied and you got that 180K out and they said, you know what? We're going to lower your interest rate. What if you told them, nah, just leave me at the same interest rate? Let me tell you why you want to know exactly for you. Now, this is not across the board. This is individual. You can find out what is the right interest rate for you. But can I share with you just some basics here? Okay, G?
Sure.
So give me an example of a loan at a higher interest rate, and then I'll show you what happens when you lower it. Give me the numbers.
So let's do a loan at 400,000.
Okay, 400,000 at 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and what's the interest rate?
Let's go with 3.75.
This is your higher interest rate, right?
Yes.
3.75. All right. And this is the principal and interest payment on this. Principal and interest payment on this is $1,852.46. Now we're going to take the same amount, okay, just to make it easy. All right. We're going to take the same amount and put it in at a lower interest rate. What's our new lower interest rate, sir?
Let's go to 2.75.
2.75. Okay. So we take that payment out, delete that, and there we go. Now we're going to just compare. 2.75, we're at 1632.96. All right. 1632.96. And at 3.75, we're at 1852.46. Okay. So far, the 2.75 seems to be winning. We're going to take a look at the summary on this. On the $400,000 loan at the 2.75 over 30 years, the bank wants $187,865. Now, here's another thing that you need to focus on. The banks are contrasting two 30-year loans. If I'm contrasting two 30-year loans, if I'm going to pay every single payment for 30 years, I want the lowest interest rate possible. Okay. But what if I want to accelerate? What if I want to pay fewer payments? What if I want to pay less interest, gain equity faster? Then all the numbers that the bank has given me, we have to throw out of the window, because if I can pay off in 7 years, these 30-year numbers don't apply. All right. So let's take a look at the other loan for 30 years. Ooh, $266,855. So let's take a look at this one first, G. So if I pay payment number one, and you can see how much goes to principal on payment number one, G.
Let's see. So your principal payment, the first payment is 602.
And the amount of interest?
$1,250.
So let's say we make that first payment in January. Okay. So our principal payment for February would be how much money?
It would be $604.
604. So now we can prepay that 604.34, couldn't we? We don't have to wait till February to give that to the bank, do we?
No, we don't.
If I prepay that, then the bank has to apply that to principal. I'm paid down to line 2 on my principal balance where I owe $398,793.20, and my next mortgage payment for February is actually on line 3 of the schedule. Are you seeing that?
Yeah.
I just saved $1,248 in interest I don't have to pay. Pretty good?
Yep.
Okay. But when I lower, so this is at 3.75, I can get rid of one line for $604. When I lower the interest rate to 2.75, what happens to my principal payment now?
So when you lower, your principal goes up to $717.
Exactly. When you lower the interest rate, your principal payment increases, your interest payment decreases. And so the key here is interest costs I skip don't matter. So even though the bank wants to charge me more interest per month, it's easier to skip out on the interest payments at a lower principal payment, which means a higher interest rate.
Got it.
Okay. So figuring out, since you're a real estate investor, we want to do some math and say, how much money do I have to work with? And if I have a certain amount of money over a certain period of time and I can advance it to the loan without compromising monies that I want to invest in other properties, looking at my situation, which is the best interest rate for me? Now, you being a real estate investor, the right interest rate for you may not be the same interest rate for the real estate investor across town.
Got it.
We want to find out something that works for you and say, yeah, but I do know this. You absolutely do not want the lowest interest rate available. That's number one. And number two, you never want to have a mortgage that's less than 30 years. Take 30, take 40, take 50, but never take 20, 25, 15, 10, none of them. When you lower the interest rate, when you lower the term, you make it harder to pay the loan off early.
I definitely agree with that.
Okay. I want to make sure that everybody understands how to get a savings and earnings report. Go to either pillmethod.com or ice10k.com and then click on get a savings and earnings report. Fill out all the information, follow the instructions, and you can know the month, day, and year you could be debt free. Here's what I need everybody to know, folks. Get this and get this well. We teach a lot of stuff here, but what we also need you to know, it needs to be individualized. You can save money with what I'm teaching you here, but without being individualized, you can't optimize your interest savings. You want to save the most you can per dollar. You want to do what E.T. did. Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher, paid off all of his debt in about 4 years following the P.I.L.L method. My name is Don Daniel, founder of P.I.L Method International, and our team created the most powerful money management, wealth building, debt elimination system ever created. At our recent seminar in Nashville, Tennessee, the keynote speech was delivered by the #1 motivational speaker in the world, Dr. Eric Thomas. E.T., as he's also known, mentioned he paid off his mortgage in 4 years using the P.I.L method. I invite you to watch and listen.
Listen to me, y'all. One of his mentees took us through one of their programs, and I paid off my mortgage. But guess what happened? My marriage went to a whole nother level. And you know why? Because my wife is a security freak. And even when I blew up, my wife would be like, oh, you blew up, but how long is you gonna keep making this kind of money? I was like, I don't know, forever. She's like, you sure? Because I'm gonna keep my license as a nurse just in case you don't. So when I paid the house off, my boy was like, you ain't gotta do that, you can do this. But when I paid the house off using that program, it took the stress level all the way down for my wife because we no longer had a mortgage. Does that make sense? That thing that was coming every month, that was getting on her nerves, we didn't have that no more. And so she was at rest.
Did you hear that? No mortgage, no stress. If you would like to become debt and mortgage free within an average of 7 to 9 years by cutting your interest costs by up to 75%, Go to pillmethod.com and request a savings and earnings report today.